on to our panel discussion. And I have the pleasure of inviting our next panelists. We have with us Dr. DC Patra. He was there in before lunch.
Yes, yes.
You are there. We missed you during the order of
Thank you.
So Dr. DC Patra is Executive Director, Planning, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Mr. Sanjeev Sharma is Executive Director from Indian Oil Corporation, Corporate Planning and Economic Studies. We have the Scotch Development Foundation Senior Fellows with us. Mr. Surinder Singh Soor, you heard him speak in the morning. He is our energy expert. He was formerly with the Niti Aayog as its advisor. We are joined by Mr. UK Sharma, Senior Fellow, Scotch Development Foundation, and also former advisor with Niti Aayog. We are going to be discussing the state of energy. In fact, we had a very good round pre-lunch where we discussed the state of power. In fact, when we talk about the energy, there are two things that come to our mind. A, the challenge, and B, the opportunity. We believe that, so far our power as well as the energy, oil and gas sector, they've managed to convert all challenges into their opportunities, even when it comes to the pandemic situation. But there are certain challenges which remain. And even though while continue to battle with those challenges, we have come to a stage wherein almost to a great extent, COVID challenges are behind us because we managed the situation well, but shortage of petroleum, crude and the oil refining capacity. At the same time, dependence on the foreign supplies, which is imports, price hike, and lack of market determined pricing system has always been with us. On top of that, there has been pressure on improving performance to ensure valorization of assets. At the same time, reducing costs to remain competitive, and the environmental footprint. So we also have pollution as one of the very big challenge which is faced by the petroleum sector, our energy sector. Having said this, let me first invite our participant from BPCL, Dr. Patra. While all these things have been with us, you have done exceedingly well, particularly in the face of COVID, wherein you managed to maintain your supply chains, including even LPG. Even though the April-May sales were down by almost like 60 to 70% for petrol and almost like 60% and above for diesel supplies, you kept the operations running. You dealt with high inventory and even fulfilled the import commitments. Refineries though ran, but at a lower than capacity. But taking a cue from this challenge, you revived projects. Almost 2,000 plus projects were revived at an outlay of 50,000 crore rupees. That means to say that you battled with the challenges well and responded in an equally magnanimous manner. So Dr. Patra, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you, Dr. Gulsaran. Thanks, coach, distinguished panelists and delegates. Dr. Gulsaran has actually enumerated the entire spectrum of challenges that oil industry has gone through and perhaps still going across. Now, two outstanding evidence of excellence in COVID response from the energy sector, if I have to list. One is every house had light during this period. And second, every kitchen had LPG to cook. And if I have to add a third point, then I will say that every vehicles that are required to run on emergency service, including the ambulances and defense preparedness, had the fuel to run on. Now, challenges, as Dr. Gulsaran has rightly pointed out, were many. And the organization that I represent, Bharat Petroleum Corporation, a crown in the jewel of Indian ink. The first challenge was to take care of the life of the people who are operating the establishment, about 11,000 of them across the country, and their families. And then the livelihood of the people. Today, the country is struggling for a revival of the economy, revival of the market, revival of the projects, infusion of income into the system, monetary system and financial system. Now, that was one of the challenges the Bharat Petroleum is grappling with. And then the third one, that relief to be provided to the people at the time of distress. And the fourth one is to create a business ambience at all its operating location for all its stakeholders, including customers, transporters, dealers and LPG distributors, and their staff. Now, BPCL, as a very dynamic kind of organization, has adapted to this evolving situation, the deadly pandemic and the stringent lockdown. Almost spontaneously, the leadership arose from across the rank and file. Of course, the protocol laid down by the Government of India helped us to go step by step as the pandemic progressed, as the lockdown progressed, and unlocking started. BPCL was quick to recognize that the best way to prevent the public health menace was to spread public awareness. Now, BPCL could reach every nook and corner of the country through its network, 16,000 plus dealers, retail outlets, and 6,000 plus LPG distributors, and about 250 operating locations of BPCL, through which public awareness was widely created and circulated. The social media channel by BPCL was used very extensively, liberally, and for the kind information of my colleagues here, BPCL social network following is one of the largest in the world, and BPCL has used extensive use of that. BPCL kept its live operational despite the pandemic, despite the lockdown. It kept the refineries running, it kept the pipelines running, it kept the operating locations alive despite the subdued demand. Both the supply side as well as the demand side, the entire supply chain logistics were kept live at a level that is required, even incurring loss, incurring a lot of adjustments. As Dr. Gulsaran rightly pointed out, our April sale for the entire oil industry was down by 64% for petrol, was down by 61% for diesel, and 94% for ATF. Still the services were running. And if we take the Q1 of this current fiscal, the petrol demand destruction or contraction was 22%, diesel was 27%, and ATF was 69% demand contraction. Still the services were available wherever required. Fortunately for the audience, let me state here that in October 2020, our demand has come back the pre-COVID situation for all products. But still there are issues that are being managed. Now, the question that comes is, what will the enduring impact of this COVID management? One enduring feature is the facilities were tested to be used with less manpower. Second, customers adopted digital cash transaction almost voluntarily. And third, meeting and conferencing through video became order of the day, what we are doing today, just now, right now, as we are exchanging. New HR practices and tools were used for creative talent development exercise. And fifth, leadership sprang up at all levels to take charge of the uncertain situation and unforeseeable developments. A resilient organization that invested in situational leadership, that trait was tested and was successful. BPCL's HSSC, Health Service and Security and Environment, that department prepared SOPs for all kinds of operation, including administrative offices. And one example that is glaring, and I am proud to share with you, every cylinder that was delivered in the customer's doorstep was sanitized twice after it left the operating location, bottling plant, and once again after it left the distributors go down just before the delivery. HR initiatives and IT services were put to severe test, and they came out very gloriously. How to keep the employees energized, engaged, giving their creative genius a fillip, that was tested by, and that was proved very, very useful. Now, learning, conferencing, and work from not home, work from anywhere, that was the order of the day. So this is how I'd like to summarize my discussion and come to conclusion. Thank you once again, Scott, Dr. Gulsharan, all the panelists and the audience. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Patra. We will reserve our questions for the panel discussion. In the meanwhile, let me move over to invite Mr. Sanjeev Sharma, Executive Director, Corporate Planning and Economic Studies at Indian Oil Corporation. So in fact, you know, even Indian Oil happens to be the second oil major of the country. Maintaining business continuity, operations and supply chains has remained a challenge, particularly during these times for many. But out of 30,000 fuel stations and 33,000 employees serving almost 13 crore plus LPG households, supplies never stopped. You know, there has been an excellent performance when it comes to Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, which has benefited almost 3.5 crore families. But you know, the challenge, to my mind, the biggest challenge was panic. And you are in the business of supply, and the widespread migration that happened from all across the country probably would have, you know, created the problem of non-traceability of addresses, not being able to deliver while you were ready. So in terms of, you know, the planning, in terms of delivery, in terms of keeping the supply lines up, in terms of keeping the supply chains intact and maintained, and the business continuity. So how did you fare, Mr. Sharma?
Thank you, Dr. Gulsharan. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be on this platform. I think Dr. Patra has beautifully summed up what all efforts the oil marketing companies have made during COVID. And perhaps this is one sector where despite all odds, it's not only COVID. I think I will go back in history whenever there has been any kind of natural calamity or any kind of, disruption. I think the oil majors or the oil companies in India have always stood by the government. And you take the example of, getting fuels to even the front areas like Ladakh and Northeast. So the kind of planning which has gone over the years probably has been so robust that we have, as an industry, I think the three oil companies have virtually covered every nook and corner of the country, whether it is in terms of LPG distribution or whether it is in terms of regular petroleum supplies, or even in terms of setting up the projects and providing employment to the most backward areas, to areas where no other investor would like to go, but we have always stood there and tried to provide that kind of service. And I think that we take a lot of pride that we are really partners in progress of the country, and a lot of contribution for nation building. Now, having said that, I think in COVID, while we initially thought that with this kind of lockdown, which perhaps had never happened in history, but with kind of network we have and the kind of infrastructure we have, everything was up and running from day one. So I don't think there was any customer or any person who was deprived of his supply, whether it was LPG cylinder or whether it was petrol or diesel. So all the distributors were up, they were all running. All the petrol stations, 30,000 of them, they were all running. So I think the kind of network we have probably stood us in good stead. As far as the state of energy, which perhaps was the underlying theme of this panel, I would quickly like to reiterate our Honorable Prime Minister's vision, which he spelled out recently during one of these energy conferences, that is Serra Week India. And he said there are 7 key drivers. And these 7 key drivers, if you listen, they actually encompass the entire energy value chain in India. So like the first driver is moving towards a gas-based economy. Now, currently, if you look at India's energy mix, we only have a 6% share of gas in the entire energy mix. Majorly, it is coal, which is about 44%, followed by oil and other renewables. In fact, it's very surprising that even today, 12% of the energy mix is from traditional biomass. So which also has its, while it is a traditional fuel, but it has its own, effects on health of the people. So one is moving towards a gas-based economy. So we have a target as a nation to move towards 15% by 2030 from the current 6%. Another key driver is to move towards cleaner fuels. And this will cover the entire spectrum of both petroleum and coal industry. Then there will be greater reliance on biofuels. And these biofuels will be modern biofuels, not the traditional biofuels. So we must have heard about compressed biogas. So this is one biofuel, which will benefit the agriculturist, because that stubble and all those issues which come out with that, and the pollution which happens, especially in Delhi. We keep hearing about crop burning. So that stubble can be used for making ethanol, and ethanol will go into petrol. So for biofuel, there's a lot of focus. Then renewables, there is a target that we have to do renewables of 459 gigawatt by 2030. And in fact, recently also during the G20, our Honorable Prime Minister has stated this issue, that we are well ahead of our targets. So I think on that front, we are probably moving in the very right direction and at a very good pace. Then increasing contribution to electricity. Now everybody has got electricity connection at home. We are also trying to move into emerging fuels like hydrogen, which is also a clean fuel. So a lot of research is going into that, and probably in times to come, this will get into a commercial scale, and that will also add to climate issues. And lastly is digital innovation. So I think Dr. Patra also gave an example of, if you go to a petrol station today, every petrol station has got a means of digital acceptance of money, which was probably not there earlier. That's one example. Other than that, digital innovation is also covering our refineries and our entire supply chain. So these 7 pillars, I think, very nicely, capture the entire essence of India's future as far as the energy sector is concerned, and the way we are moving as a country and the kind of development we are seeing. I'm sure that in times to come, we will surely overcome all these issues of climate change and any other associated issues which have problems for the citizens, whether it is pollution or all these kind of things. So that is as far as the state of energy in the country as of now, I would like to spell out. And worldwide also, you must be hearing there's a greater shift towards renewables. So we are also very much in sync with the world, and lot of infusion of technology is happening, which is resulting into this shift. And I'm very hopeful. And with the kind of network and the kind of manpower we have in the oil companies in India, and the kind of technology which is getting inducted, I am very bullish that we have a very good future as far as the state of energy for the country is concerned. So that was a small capsule of my thoughts, and I'm open to any questions.
We'll certainly come back to you with questions, but what comes, right up there in my thinking, you also talked about the increasing role of gas. So the government actually wants to increase the share of natural gas in the energy mix, to about, say, the target was to have raise it to 15% by 2030. Yes. Which is about 6 to 7% today, moving very slow. While the role has become extremely significant when it comes to the residential and transport sector, but in terms of the power sector, the power for power generation, it has not really assumed a catalytic role. Where imported natural gas kind of remains squeezed by cheap renewables and coal. So it kind of, while renewables and coal are coming in, on the other hand, the gas becomes a challenge. So how is it that we make the two meet and meet the target of 2030?
As far as gas, I think till now there has been an issue of the infrastructure. Now there are many stranded power plants who do not have access to gas, because they were in such pockets where there was no trunk line available. But with the kind of focus which is there now on gas infrastructure, I'm sure in the next 3 to 4 years, probably we're going to reach out to all nooks and corners of the country. And that will include industrial areas, that will include power sector. And of course, I'm not from power sector, but what I read, even the big major companies in India are stating that by 2030, they will be having a 30% share of renewables. So that very recently I read somewhere that even one of the big PSUs who's in power sectors stating that they will be moving away from coal and they will be producing 30% of their output through renewables. So I think that there is a lot of things which are happening, and infrastructure, of course, at the pace at which we are moving now, I'm sure in the next 3-4 years, you will certainly see a change as far as even power sector is concerned, and gas being a feedstock for that.
So has COVID impacted this dream?
COVID has impacted, certainly, but then again, the kind of focus we have now, especially on projects. And, it's very heartening to see that despite COVID and despite all kind of, disruption happening, we could resume, I think, more than 90% of our projects as early as May. That was only 1 month after COVID. So, and if you talk about things right now, I think now things are back on track as far as projects are. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, gradually, the issue of migrant labor going back and coming back, I think those things are probably falling back in place. So overall, you'll see even on the economic front, like yesterday, we had the GDP data, which came down to -7.5. So that certainly is a very good story as far as the country is concerned. Mm-hmm. Coming down from 23.5 to -7.5 and beating all estimates, even of RBI, which said 8.5 minus. So even in reality sector, I see whatever changes in the last 2 months as far as progress is concerned in the real estate. So that also is an indication that the migrant labor, which had gone in a big way, probably coming back or must have come back in a large number by now.
Sure, that's a valid point. So Rohan, you have raised your hand. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, absolutely. It was great to listen to Mr. Patra and Mr. Sharma. In fact, the responsibility of keeping India's engines and cook stoves running lies on you, good gentlemen. And thank you very much for doing your best efforts in that regard. I have a specific question to Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sharma, it's, as a young Indian, it's great to hear the efforts that Indian Oil is making with a focus on renewables, on a focus on clean fuels, while I'm sure you're doing your best to ensure that the supply side of the fuel economy in terms of renewable energy is met. What are some of the challenges in terms of, ensuring that the demand side is met equally? How can we expedite adoption? Because there will be behavioral nudges which will be required, in terms of getting people to buy these fuel efficient cars, getting people to invest in technology which is more expensive. So is your department, the Department of Economic Studies, doing any gap analysis, or are there any specific bottlenecks which you think can be easily addressed, sir?
Look, as far as renewables, I think pricing was the issue. Of course, we have no control on that. But of late, you must have seen that even solar is, coming down day by day, and now it is, in fact, cheaper than the conventional form of electricity. Similarly, for electric, now electric vehicle right now it's a very nascent stage for India's concerned, even worldwide, barring one or two countries, maybe Norway, which is claiming that it is doing about more than 50% of new sales through electric. But even in the Western world, whether it's US or Europe, while there's a lot of focus, but the pricing is still an issue. But I find that maybe in a couple of years, you will have some path-breaking technology, which will again, reduce the electric battery cost to such a level that it will be ready for mass production. In India, in fact, more than 60 to 65% of your petrol sales is consumed by two-wheelers. And it is expected that in the two-wheeler segment, you will have much more early entry of electric on a larger scale, because that is going to be affordable. And already there are a couple of startups, I think majorly in Bangalore, who are already into I think it will be a mind level where you set asking.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Love to take this further. Let me, in the meanwhile, invite our next speaker, Mr. Surendra Singh Soor, who has worked very, very extensively in the energy sector while being at the Niti Aayog. So, amongst other things that you are going to talk about on the state of energy in India, my one straight question to you is, since you're coming from the policy, the draft of the national energy policy, debated very heavily, and it was also appreciated across all circles for providing an excellent framework for a swift adoption, for guiding the policy making, implementation, and enforcement across sectors and the central and the state government. So how do we move towards more robust energy data and policy governance when we talk about the energy sector? Mr. Soor, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you for me this opportunity to talk about the energy sector as a whole. And since everybody is aware that the integrated energy policy, which came into existence in 2008, is under revision in Niti Aayog, and that process is already on. As far as the critical issues related to energy sector, especially two things are very important to look into. First is the crude oil production. So if we see the latest reports, as per press release by Office of Economic Advisor on 27th of November, the cumulative growth of 8 core sector industries during April to October was minus 13%. And 3 core sectors which are out of this 8 core sector is related to oil, and these are crude oil, and the growth was minus 6.1%, natural gas was minus 12.5%, refinery product was minus 16.4%. And since, as we have discussed in the forenoon regarding electricity, the growth was negative there as well, but that has the growth is positive now for last 2 months. But in oil sector, the growth is still negative. So it is very important to understand this, that why this growth is not getting in positive direction. Now, if we see the oil production, it has fallen around 2% since 2012. It is important because if the oil production, crude oil production will fall down, then we need to import the crude oil, and the crude oil product import has gone up from 82% to 88% in respect to last year. And this impacts our economy. Around the crude oil import bill is around 2,50,000 crore rupees. So this is very important. So I would like to know from the panelists who are from the major companies like BPCL and IOCL, that what policy changes are required so that the this production of crude oil take place in India, because it's impacting a lot to our economy. And the second question which comes to my mind to be debated is that now a lot of emphasis has been given to renewable energy, as is being mentioned by Mr. Sharma as well, that the Prime Minister has even gone to G20 and made some commitment that we'll be exploiting around 450 gigawatt by 2030. So how the oil companies take a commercial views on this, since the prices of renewable energy are falling. So how best they will be able to perform their operations commercially. And beside this, since we need to provide clean energy to our rural areas, and right now we are providing piped natural gas to our major cities. So slowly we need to provide the PNG to our smaller towns and then to the rural areas to make a carbon neutral economy in India. So what is your take on this, sir? Thank you.
Well,
Dr. Patra, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for the issues raised. As a student of energy economics, let me reflect just in one line the state of energy in India. Yes, despite there are many areas where action is required in the sphere of policy, technology, regulation, and demand, one would like to say that energy sector is one of the most progressive and policy, a sector where policy is very active. Now look at some of the main spectrum of energy, starting with coal, oil, and then ending with renewable, including the latest hydrogen by my colleague Sandeep Sharma. Everywhere there has been reforms. Everywhere there has been investments being sought for. And everywhere there has been technological developments happening worldwide, and India is keeping a track of that. Now, the second point which was raised by Mr. Surinder is, what about our indigenous production of crude oil? Yes, indigenous production of crude oil is remaining stagnant for some last 4-5 years, for about a decade also, but for last 2-3 years there has been some improvement. But more improvement will be seen when the policy actions being taken for last 3-4 years in the form of help, hydro help, that is hydro policy, some help is the abbreviation. When those policy measures are seen and taken off the ground, we will see a renewed kind of production happening in the country. However, everything said and done, the domestic production or indigenous production is a function of the natural endowment that is there available in the country. Notwithstanding whatever declining production or stagnant production, India has never faced a situation where this scarcity of production of oil and gas and demand remains unmet. Therefore, we have strategic reserve, we have import, we have geopolitical arrangements, and we have investments acreage outside, we have open acreage policy in the country, we have revival of marginal fields, we have enhanced recovery programs. So with all these programs, situation is going to improve and going to be better. Coming to the clean energy to our villages. Yes, clean energy, see, oil industry is faced with 2 challenges. One is more of energy and less of carbon. Now this challenge, this balance is being maintained by shifting focus to renewables, and in renewable, solar, wind, even compressed biogas, which Mr. Sandeep Sharma hinted in his discussion. All these actions are being taken in a very, very proactive way. And that was referred 450 megawatt of renewable by 2030. So India is being lauded for its progressive renewable activities even worldwide. Thank you.
Surendraji, does that answer your question?
Yes, partially, yes. But like the price of gas is also important. Since we are importing and the price of gas is very high, since there was some discussion about gas-based power plant in India. So India has around 24,000 megawatt of standard gas plants which are not operating because the gas price is high and they are not being able to compete with renewable energy and the coal-based power plant. So if we were not being able to increase our internal production, then the prices of gas will remain higher, and we will not first thing that we will not be able to run our gas based power plant such a high cost, and the gas we are going to provide to rural communities or smaller towns, that price will also not being able to compete with the renewable energy. So these two things are very important from providing the clean gas to our economy. So
Sharma ji, you were replying to Mr. Sood's question.
Shall I address in just 2 minutes?
Please go ahead.
1 minute?
Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yes. The price of gas is an issue. I mean, we do admit it's an issue. There are gases being produced in the country which are administered prices, and LNG that we import are subject to the international forces. And if we have to supply gas on commercial line, then the gas has to be market related price. It can be high, it can be low from the consumer's point of view, but it has to be market related. And keeping a kind of market related price in view, a lot of measures have been taken to deregulate the gas pricing system. And the latest one and the very important one is the operation of Indian gas exchange. So we will have the gas exchange. We will have a market determined price. We'll have the flexibility of the price meeting the equilibrium of demand and supply. But yes, there is a constraint of infrastructure, which are also being addressed, as my colleague Sanjeev Sharma said. Lot of infrastructure investment, including gas grid, the whole covering the whole country is on. Urja Ganga project is on. LPG import, LNG import facilities are being done along with the private involvement, private capital. Therefore, this is gasification of the economy is being attempted, and it is in the right direction. Price is an issue, but that has to be a market related issue. Thank you.
Mr. Sharma.
Yeah, I think one question Mr. Surinder Singh asked was about last 2 months, the recovery and oil not really picking up that way. So if you look at the major fuels which are there, it is petrol, diesel. Diesel, of course, is one of them, about 44% of the entire petroleum sales. Petrol is 13%, LPG is 13%, aviation fuel is about 6 to 8%. So right now, aviation fuel is absolutely at a 50% mark as late as of today. So aviation fuel is contributing to the drag. Diesel is contributing to the drag. Of course, last month we had a positive diesel sales, but then again this month I don't know what will be the final figure which will come. So it will take a while once these sectors which are totally affected, like tourism, travel, leisure, so they were all banking on aviation. So once they pick up, which will take some time, I'm sure that maybe once this vaccine comes and things starts normalizing, we will be back on a growth trajectory, certainly. Because if you look at the last 5-7 years data, India has been growing in terms of petroleum product consumption by in the range of 4 to 5%. This is not the case anywhere worldwide, barring China. So I'm sure once things are normal, we will be back on track.
Thank you. So before I invite Mr. Yuka Sharma, let me ask one question, pose this question to Mr. Soor. Mr. Soor, since you come from the policy side and we always have the international experiences to cite as examples, so which suggests that a diverse mix of flexibility investments is needed for a successful integration of wind and solar. This can also come from the natural gas, variable renewable and themselves in energy storage, demand side response, and power grids. But many of these solutions are not really fully utilized. I mean, even partially utilized in India. To fully activate this kind of a diverse set of flexibility options, what is it that is required for the government to put in place is electricity market reforms, and then enable the correct price signals and create a robust regulatory framework. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I fully agree with what you're saying. Is first thing is that the subsidy because in our energy sector, some of the things are subsidized, some of the things are not subsidized. So that creates a problem. Electricity is subsidized to a greater extent. And in oil sector as well, the petroleum was initially subsidized, which the government has taken away the subsidy portion, but diesel is slightly subsidized, and even this LPG is also subsidized. So when this market distortion take place, then to compete 2-3 segments of a energy sector becomes difficult. So I think if subsidy neutral environment is being created in India, then these two, three things like renewable energy, especially solar, and then this gas. If the production of crude oil takes place in India in near future, and we are not being, we will do away with the import of oil, then maybe this gas and renewable energy will be able to compete with each other, and we will be able to supply gas and renewable energy to the rural areas, and we can balance our energy mix.
Thank you so much. Let me now invite Mr. UK Sharma, Senior Fellow with the Scotch Foundation and formerly with the Niti Aayog as advisor.
I have a question with Mr. Sanjeev Sharma ji. In fact, this sector is highly import dependent. We are importing to the extent of 80%, sometimes 85%. So you have mentioned that hydrogen, ethanol can be substitute to some extent to oil consumption. There was one thinking of mixing methanol also, CH3OH, in the petrol. So Mr. Gadkari and Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan has taken series of meetings on development of this methanol mix into our energy. So is there any progress on that? CH3OH, it is CH3OH, it is a single carbon, it is not a long chain hydrocarbon. So what is the status on that?
As of now, what I know, I think there is no definite date by which it has been decided when this will happen. Of course, still discussions are on that. But as far as ethanol, surely there is a very well-defined target, and a lot of policy intervention has taken place even for sugar industry. So right now, if ethanol, we are having about 5 to 6% doping in petrol, and the target is to make it 20% up to 2030. So on ethanol, of course, there is, and what I talked about, even other fuels like biofuels, even used cooking oil. Now we have started working on that. From used cooking oil also, we are trying to make some biofuels.
And there is no definite road plan for mixing methanol.
I will not be able to comment much because this is something which probably I'm not looking directly after. But of course, I don't think there is anything which is there which is going to happen very, very soon. Maybe it will take some time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Patra, would you like to reply to this? You are muted. You're still muted. Please unmute yourself, Dr. Patra.
I'm sorry. There is a policy that is called SATAT, Sustainable Alternative Transportation, something like that. Basically, under that policy, biofuel is being encouraged from all possible sources. Earlier, we had the first generation biofuel. Currently, we have the 2G ethanol, which is second generation biofuel. And further, we are going towards the generation of gas from municipal waste and some such waste materials. And then that is being encouraged because on the one hand, will be producing indigenous gas, and on the other hand, we will be cleaning the environment. So these are the two purposes. That is why this second generation biofuel is being encouraged. And then what my friend Sanjeev Sharma said is that compressed biogas. Recently, that also is very much under focus, and it is something which has been tested. Technology has been tested. The commercial and business model already is in place. Oil companies have already floated inquiries and awarded the contract and signed an MOU. And it's a proven kind of, it's a promising kind of business model where a lot of compressed biogas will come. So particularly methane might not have progressed for mixing with, but then there are multiple sources of this biofuel being generated under the policy of SATAT, where funding, the commercial arrangements are there, financing arrangement is there, technological arrangement is there, Government of India's encouragement and involvement is there, oil companies are all working that. So that is how the import dependence of India to the extent of 85% in case of crude oil is being targeted to reduce. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So while the whole lot of efforts are being made to take the sector to the next level, and obviously so, for the innate capacities that India has built in, particularly let's look at a few numbers. When we say that India is the third largest consumer of oil, the fourth largest oil refiner, and a net exporter of refined products. The rate of growth in India's oil consumption is expected to surpass, as per again the estimates, by mid-2020s, give or take maybe a year or so, making India an extremely attractive market for refinery investment. So I would like to ask both these gentlemen, what is our state of readiness? Mr. Sharma, to start with you.
Refinery, we have definite plans, and some of the projects already on as far as expansion of refineries are concerned. And you must have also heard about a new grassroots refinery which is slated to come up in Maharashtra at Ratnagiri. So right now, because of availability of land and all those issues, it is still to take off. But definitely it will be the largest refinery. It will be a 60 MMTA refinery. Other than that, there is a lot of stress on increasing the petrochemical intensity index. Now, traditionally in India, we have had refineries which have been only producing these conventional fuels. But worldwide, the kind of trend which is happening, not that oil is going to disappear, but the trend worldwide, of course, is that everybody is going more and more into petrochemicals, and there are refineries in the world which are having a petrochemical intensity index of 40%, 50%. That is what they are planning. In India, we are very low on that. So that is one area where we are trying to integrate our refineries with petrochemicals. And new expansion is happening in pockets where there was a deficit. So there is no dearth of the technology. There is no dearth of the expertise as far as the refining sector is concerned in India. I think we have, if what you said, we are the fourth largest refiner. So that itself proves that we have the wherewithal.
Dr. Patra.
Currently, the refining capacity of our country is 250 million ton against our consumption of about 230 million ton. Therefore, we are surplus refining country, and we are exporting our refined petroleum products, adding foreign exchange to our exchequer. Despite being a surplus country, India is geographically well positioned to become a refining hub in the Asia Pacific region. And that advantage is being fully availed as my colleague Mr. Sanjeev said, that we are going to have many more refineries, and there is a plan to take this capacity from 250 to 50 million to almost 400 million by 2030. But the important is refining is only word, but its configuration, its yield pattern, and as rightly said by my colleague Sanjeev, that the petrochemical index is going to change. Therefore, you will have more refining capacity, but these will be of much higher efficiency, much lower energy consuming, where there and of a high order of digital refining, and of course with higher petrochemical index. Thank you.
Mr. Sood, would you like to add on to this?
Definitely, if India's competitiveness is in refining, we are exporting a lot of products, and if we could be a hub in near future, and we could even we should not mind in importing crude oil and then selling the refining products. So yes, definitely it is a added advantage because our location is such that we can supply to the whole Asia, and even we can go to the Europe as well, because our strategic location is giving us a competitive advantage. So definitely, if we could increase our crude oil production internally, or we could import and then competitively we could produce the products and sell it world over, is a good thing. And moreover, there is a lot of pressure on India for providing clean fuel to the citizens of India as far-flung areas. So if we need to supply them with the PNG, then this refining capacity enhancement will definitely add to India's favor. And if we could reduce the cost as well, because if the efficient refineries are there in India itself, so that will help us in near future. Definitely, it's a good thing that this capacity needs to be enhanced.
So while the future is always bright, there is always a flip side. Let me, move over to the question, probably based on the same challenge, what I mentioned to start with, that the crude shortage, the shortage of petroleum, as well as high dependence on the imports, which is almost to the tune of 80% and above. With all best efforts of upstream reforms, help what Dr. Patra talked about, and progressively building up dedicated emergency oil stocks, at the level of all petroleum and marketing companies. With this, despite best efforts, our reserve capacity is, if I'm not mistaken, is around 40 million barrels, which can barely cover up to 10 days, maybe 12 days of current net imports. The way things are moving, say for instance, 20, 35, 40, we may be left only with 3 to 4 days of net imports coverage. Therefore, to what extent is it really important to have a stock holding policy in place and move strategically in that direction? I'll start with Mr. Sharma.
Well, I think we have a sufficient coverage. There are two types of coverage. One is, you must have heard about strategic petroleum reserves. So that is, crude being stored. So we already have about, as a country, 5.3 million metric tons. And already work is already on brick and mortar at about another addition of, if I'm not mistaken, some 6 million metric tons. So total is going to reach about 11 million metric tons storage. Now, besides that, one thing which probably gets unnoticed is the kind of reserve, of the kind of inventory the oil companies are holding is also not small. It's pretty big inventory which we are holding, both at the refining level and even at our marketing terminals. So I don't think we can say that it is 10 days. I think it is much more beyond 10 days storage. So that is, I think that has probably been factored in, that this can be a cause of concern for countries who have a very small reserve. But I think we have already taken steps towards that. And if we are going to have a 11 million metric ton of storage, and in addition to refining and marketing terminals holding something more, then that number of days coverage goes to much more. So I think that area probably is well covered.
Dr. Patra, your views on it? You have to unmute yourself. You're still muted, Dr. Patra. Please unmute.
Yes, energy security has been an area where India has been working for a long time. That is the reason why we have strategic petroleum reserve at 4 different locations. We have storage at refining as well as at marketing downstream value chain. Despite that, yes, the number of days covered, if you see, that may seem to be low. But then energy security has a demand side as well as supply side, and action is being taken on both the fronts. It also has a financial side. For example, whatever may be the geopolitical situation or anything, if we have a good foreign exchange reserve to buy crude, crude is available. It is not that crude over the world over is getting adjusted, all is not available. It is at what price? And therefore, at geopolitical level, these issues are being also addressed so that we get at a relatively low price. I mean, we are aware that our petroleum minister, he doesn't leave any forum at world platform to say that the price has to be a compatible price, a balanced price, which will take care of both the producers as well as consumers. This kind of voice is being raised so that the price remains low. Our petroleum products becomes affordable to our people, and therefore the financial part is also important and it is being taken care. One more aspect to energy security is shipping side. If our shipping lines are able to operate, and if our shipping channels are free of any kind of threat, then that is also a way of taking care of energy security. So multi-pronged action is being taken to take care of the security of our product supply into India. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Soor, in fact, this brings me to pose the same question to you on the second phase of the stockholding policy, which is what is being part of the national discussion.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very important issue since we have seen that complete lockdown in India because in March. So though some of the things we were able to manage internally because we had our own refining capacity and crude oil production was also there. And energy mix is also very important point here. Since we are having ample generation capacity in electricity, so we were able to meet our demand as a whole when we talk about energy mix. So definitely we need to enhance our crude oil production internally, and strategic reserve also need to be enhanced slightly more. Maybe it should be we should be able to meet our oil requirement at least for 30 days, around 30 days, because in near future we don't know. The similar situation may come up again, and we will not be able to import. All these shipping lines are stopped and for more than 1 month. Then what will happen to us? And second thing is that the focus of Government of India for renewable energy production and converting our vehicles from oil to electricity. So that will give a very strong, strong
You might be.
background, so that whenever such crisis occurs, we are being able to at least move our economy, because this movement of vehicles is very important. So after law and order, we have, this energy is very, very vital, because everybody has to take food, and energy, the food is very important, and energy is very critical for that. So and for even during our discussion with all states during COVID time, that movement of essential commodities, especially medicines, is dependent on vehicles. So if the vehicles are not moving at the time of crisis, then how we will be able to manage our law and order and supply of essential commodities, especially to the hospitals. So at that point of time, it was also observed that energy is very critical, and we need to have this at least 30 days energy backup, uh, from where it comes, whether it comes from crude oil or from electricity. Uh, it should be a mix of all. That is a area of debate, and I think the energy policy which is being revised by Niti Aayog, that will also take care of this thing. And the report is under still at a discussion point. So I think this is what is a very valid uh, point which Gurcharan has raised. It needs to be debated, and we should have a very sharp focus on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for these extremely valuable inputs. We have a question coming in from Western Coalfields. Can I request the gentleman to ask the question? You're online with us. Can you hear us? All right, so with this, we'll have to stop the discussion here, although this has been a very, very invigorating and very involving discussion. Much that I would have liked to take it further and leverage from the experience of the two oil majors, those who have joined us, along with the policy perspective brought in by Mr. Soor as well as Mr. Sharma. So with this, thank you all very much for joining this panel discussion. We have the poll coming up on your screens right now. With this, there is going to be the last round of live voting for all the projects which participated in the online exhibition. So they seek your support. Kindly do participate in this. The poll right now in front of you is about the panel, as well as immediately after this is going to be on the online voting.